Welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast. This is Jeff Mitchell. I believe leaders must be anticipatory to chart a path forward. We can either be proactive and move forward, or sit back and be reactive and risk falling behind. Wayfinders lead. The NCAA Pathway Program is designed to incubate and inspire the next generation of executives in our profession. I am grateful for my pathway experience and encourage others to explore their own opportunity in the NCAA Pathway Program.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to the One Question Leadership Podcast, where we highlight executive and organizational leadership. Be sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1Q Leadership. Our guest today, always a returning guest, Sean Frazier. Sean is the VP of Intercollegiate Athletics at Northern Illinois University. Just finished your 10th year there, right?
Correct.
Which is excellent, in the industry for over 25 years. Wealth of experience, wealth of thoughts, always has an educated opinion on some things and some excellent ideas. So I want you on today, while we're here at NACDA, to tell me a little bit about what is on your mind regarding college athletics.
Yeah, so I appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot. You know, we're at NACDA. Just a great feel, right? To have, so many colleagues, young professionals, seasoned professionals like myself, and you're engaged in a level of discourse that really fills the cup back up, right? You're at the end of the year. You're dealing with a number of different things from a finale standpoint, but then you go into these sessions for professional development and education, and it's really good. But the biggest one, it just kind of hit me. I just coming out of a MOA symposium, educational point, and a number of colleagues around the table were asking me different questions around diversity, equity, inclusion. And one of the ones they asked me, I couldn't respond to because I didn't know. I should know to some degree, but I don't. They asked me the big question of all these different state statutes in these different states. We're in the state of Florida right now. They have one. Ohio, Texas. There's a number of institutions that have just taking a look at DEI and want to make some significant changes to it. Yeah. Having the words diversity, equity, inclusion in your job title, performing acts that are around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. These are things I'm not familiar with because in the great state of Illinois, we don't have those issues. But I did chair a search, the Chief Diversity Officer search, co-chaired, to bring our new CDO in, and that individual did come from the great state of Texas. And so we did deal with some of this, but this last question I just got, I couldn't because it was specifically aimed at the NCAA as a governing body, right? So the real issue was, okay, in our past in the NCAA, we've had significant issues and support for DEI efforts. One in the great state of South Carolina, they had a real issue with their flag. It prohibited the state, I believe, I don't might have all these facts on it, but it limited their ability to host championships. And it was historical in nature because it really, dropped the gauntlet to say, we are a very inclusive organization. We want everyone to feel comfortable. We want to make sure that our student athletes, our staff, and others are feeling comfortable for that. And henceforth, edicts from MOIC and a number of NCAA organization components around the structure said, you will not be able to host championships if these things don't change. In this case, I believe it was the flag issue.
Yeah, there might have been something in North Carolina regarding bathrooms or something.
It could be, which is another component too. Either way, I was trying to answer the question for the young administrator, and I did not have a response. Now, we do have NCAA personnel here. I'm quite sure that Felicia Martin or someone on her staff will be able to answer, but it hearkened to me to believe that, I have not heard any public statement. Now, Charlie Baker, our new president, he's fantastic. I have met with, I've had conversations with, but I guess I was taken aback that something that's so inclusive as the NCAA governing body that we have not made some level of statement. Now, having said that, maybe there was a statement that was made. Maybe something was done. But as I was talking to some of my other seasoned colleagues, I don't believe so. So that spurred enough conversation with me to understand that wow, people losing jobs. There's people having to adjust their lifestyle, and it's all because of this groundswell around these issues around where states feel comfortable with talking about historical components or facts, critical race theory, DEI, the practice of. It's almost like, okay, a rose is still going to smell as sweet and be red no matter what, or whatever color rose that you like, quite frankly. But the point is that there hasn't been any type of real groundswell around the NCAA organization. So I didn't know what to go with that.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you could also answer that question too, a little back and forth.
I tell you what I find interesting about that, right? Because there's rarely a question where Frazier doesn't have at least some thought of opinion on it, right? So for them to talk about that, it almost like, as the practitioners, I'll say we, right? Yep. Practitioners in college athletics, we're so caught up in the minutia of the day-to-day of the things that are going on in NIL and kids and transferring and money and making sure people are sticking with the student-athlete experience and grad, the things that we care about, that this national thing, which usually comes to the forefront of our mind, especially people of color like ourselves, didn't hit until somebody asked it. Somebody younger asked it, right? Which is important. Somebody younger asked it.
Yes.
Right? Is usually how, if this was 20 years ago, right, this is probably you would have been asking somebody else that same question, like, what are we doing about this, right?
And hold that thought. We're in a session talking about the 2023 champion of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Award, right? So Grand Valley State, let me shout out to Grand Valley State. They wanted to share their marvelous, excellent athletic director. She's given a fantastic presentation. And I think what happened was, this wasn't that long ago about the issues of North Carolina or South Carolina on the flag issue. And so they just asked me the question because I'm, I guess, the seasoned one around the table. Right. I think it was so polarizing for some of them, and I guess there were some concerns. And we're also in the state of Florida, right? So there you go, right? But I think ultimately that's a big one. That's a big one that it's creeping up the space. I know there's a lot of other political important issues on the docket, name, image, and likeness, all these other things. So I'm quite sure there's an attachment to that. But I also think that, we can chew gum and walk at the same time in our organization to make sure that those who need to be protected, those things that are extremely important need to be talked about. There's got to be a really inclusive effort and equity lens. So these are all things that are always going on, right? This is a full-time agenda of what we as athletic directors, athletic administrators need to make sure that we keep our eye on, because I walked into a conversation and you can see the groundswell of why is this happening in said different states, and what can the NCAA do in its leadership. And I always say all the time, my friend, we are the NCAA.
Right.
For me to kind of throw a rock at the NCAA,
right?
That's me.
Yeah,
so then it begs to differ. I need to do something on my campus, as well as make sure my president and others are aware. So I think this was just a good conversation to have about some of the thoughts. So I threw out the name, image, and likeness thing and getting a federal standard law across everything, which is extremely important.
What everybody's
so
pushing
as
for,
President
right?
Baker's hey, God bless him. That's great. But I also think that this other thing is a bit of a burning building that we have to pay attention to, because people are losing their jobs. We are changing things. I don't know if it's simple enough just to say that we call it something different and do the same thing, because I don't think that that's going to solve the issue. At the end of the day, we saw it with the NCAA Inclusion Office being called Office of Professional Development, and now it's Office of DEI.
Right.
I think we could change some of those things around, but at the end of the day, just changing the name is not going to change the purpose, the overall understanding, the appreciation of. So I guess I've got some concerns.
Yeah,
I got some real concerns.
Let me ask you. I got two things that popped in my head. First is, as it always has been, with my limited knowledge of history, sports, college sports, high school sports has been on the forefront of things.
Oh yeah,
this, right. So thinking back, what was the process when South Carolina or North Carolina, when those things happened, from your recent memory, what was the process to get that groundswell going? Or was the leadership of the NCAA already in tune, or did we have to, from the membership, go and say, hey, here's what's happening, we need to do something, and did it come from?
Well, I think it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg thing that you just mentioned, right? We can go back from the dawn of time where sport has been the beacon for change, or the catalyst for change, since my alma mater, Sam Cunningham, from coming in playing Alabama at USC, and having Bear Bryant do what he did to
Bubba
be able
Smith
to
from
do
Michigan
It.
State,
Exactly
right?
correct.
They like, what's happening here?
That is correct.
Guys?
So I think that's one thing, but I do think that this was fortuitous for me, because these were young. These were, if they were not student athletes, they were one level at their entry level job that addressed the question to me. So I see it's bubbling up. So I'm quite sure the NCAA staff is tracking this. I just think that ultimately we might be taking a little bit longer than necessary to at least address the issue on a public basis, because we've done it in the past. I think when you're inconsistent on any level, it shows weaknesses in leadership. And I think that for me, having the pulse of the student athlete voice, the community voice, the campus voice, that's the job. That's the speed of the game. So I think right now, this is good for me to have been in the session, to know that I go back to my campus to mobilize and to make sure that we can answer the question. And then also, too, to check in with the staff. Maybe they are doing some things that are in the process of addressing those things, but haven't just been on this search for our new chief diversity officer. People are leaving their jobs. People are being let go. People are changing what they can do in those prospective states right now, because there's, in their words, an attack on diversity, equity, inclusion, and those who are facilitating it.
Yeah, let's give the NCAA the benefit of the doubt and say that there are internal conversations, right? We'll make that assumption. Because if we don't make that assumption, we'll find ourselves in a situation where the ebb and flow, how it's always been when you talk about, people of color, right? There's so many things going on. We're going to get to it, but there's transition. We got a new leader coming, and that's one of the things that we'll get to, but we'll get there. It's like, how long do we wait? How many states are getting rid of books? How many states are, trying to wipe out certain aspects of history? How many, how deep is this getting? And even though it's coming up on the presidential election, there is some politics involved with it between Democrat and Republican and the split. But when the young people are noticing, like you said, and they're starting to ask these questions, what are we doing about this, right? And that jogs something in our brain, meaning it wasn't on the forefront of our brain. That means there's bubbling, like you're saying, that it's happening. And so who do we hold somebody to account, or do we go back and to have these conversations and see what's actually being done, so that if we get asked that question again, because there's a transition at the top is big when there's transition at the top. And then you got somebody coming out of politics, so they probably understand the ebb and flow of politics too. So this is an interesting topic.
Yeah, no, it is. And, and I'm one of those who are very optimistic about President Baker's. I'm really excited about what he can do for us in this snapshot in time. I just worry about, George Floyd was one. All right. Then we had Rodney King, go back a little bit further, a couple of decades. This is no such thing as standing still. We're either moving forward or we're moving back. And I think in this regard, it's going to be hard to justify no action, or at least some level of understanding, especially from a collection of very, very, alert and vibrant students that are on our campuses, that are looking for these types of things to be able to gauge our commitment to the overall student-athlete welfare or well-being side of things. So I just think this is another thing that we should be tracking. I know in our shop we have. Yeah. I just, again, probably need a little support from some others. So I'll use this opportunity during my time here to kind of, talk to some more experienced people at the NCAA front office, and then talk further about how that could be dealt with. I get the political sides of it, Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever you want to call it. We're definitely bipartisan when it comes to this particular issue, and we want to make sure everyone feels comfortable. But because we have these things going on right now within the contiguous 50 states, and we're recruiting out of all those states I just mentioned, it's just good to get our hands around it. Because I remember right after George Floyd, the parents and guardians of the students that we were recruited, that was like the top 3 question that was sent to that was asked. And if my staff and my coaches could not respond off of that, this was a disadvantage. So it was a tough situation there. So again, I'm looking at it from a competitive standpoint. I like to win academically and athletically, and I want to make sure I have the right answers. And this was a good kind of wake-up call being in that session. Kudos to Grand Valley State again for winning the 2023 NCAA MOA Award and them fielding some of these hard, tough questions.
Right. Well, I'll say this before we wrap. You won't solve, like, issues don't get solved immediately, but if we're always thinking about, the grand plan, then the first step won't get taken.
Correct.
Right? And so I think even the question people can ask on their campuses while they're at NACTA, while they're at whatever conference they're at, is what are we doing about blank?
X.
Right?
Yep.
Just like the person asked you. And so I think it's an excellent question for us to ask ourselves as we walk around the lobby here and when we get back to our
absolutely. No, I think that we set the stage on that. And I do believe, like you just said, the question's probably already been asked.
Yeah.
I guess I'm taken aback at this point. Not to say that I need to know everything on this particular space, but it would be great to be better informed, to be able to articulate what is happening in that regard. So I'm going to get myself informed.
Yeah.
And
we'll do.
And I'm going to make sure that we have that conversation. And I think this conversation is perfect for colleagues that are out there that are not at NACTA, that are not, maybe around this particular issue. Give them a little bit of a heads up too.
Yeah, I appreciate that phrase. It's always excellent to have you here on the One Question Leadership Podcast. Insight, discussions, ideas, etc.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That was Sean Frazier. Sean is the Vice President of Intercollegiate Athletics at Northern Illinois University. And of course, I am Tai Brown with One Question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of the One Question Leadership Podcast is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.